Did you get a briefing, Paulette?
No, this time, no, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm good though. I read everything, you know me, I read everything.
Yeah, you do. I do. I know that.
All right, I'm showing 7 o'clock.
To your credit too. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mark Davis, Chairman of the Glendora Planning Commission. I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m., February 1st, 2022. Tonight's public meeting will be conducted utilizing Zoom video communications. This allows the city to conduct essential business and comply with public health administration recommendations to protect the public and city employees, to practice social distancing and to limit exposure by not allowing in-person public meetings. To ensure that the public will be able to participate in our meeting, public comments can be submitted as live comments during the Zoom meeting and via email at publiccomment@cityofglendora.org. Again, publiccomment@cityofglendora.org. At this time, I would like to ask Madam Clerk to conduct a roll.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I would like to conduct an oral roll call and request that each commissioner respond with present when their name is called. Commissioner Basara.
Present.
Commissioner Norwood.
Present.
Commissioner Arcetti.
Present.
Vice Chair Koss.
Present.
Chair Davis.
Present.
All members are present. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'll start the new year off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So however you would like to honor the flag, do so as your own choosing, but I'll start it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. One quick announcement to my my fellow commissioners, and let me start off with, I'm as guilty of this as anybody. But when another commissioner has the floor, I know things get into our head and you want to ask the question right away before it pops out, but that drives somebody else's idea out of their head and they may forget it. So when a commissioner has the floor, allow them to finish whatever they're doing without following up other questions and whatnot. I'll go round and round and round as often as we need to get all of your questions asked, jot them down. But I noticed at the last meeting, we kind of talked over each other and, in a few spots, and just for the sake of decorum, we'll wait to be recognized by me with a hand on the raise a hand, or we'll figure a way to get round and round to everybody. Lorraine, I'm getting this meeting is being live streamed. Can I hit, you got it? I got it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, Carter entered the room. Okay, so with that, does anyone wish to reorder or add to the agenda this evening? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands or any requests, so I'll consider that a nay. At this time, I will now open public comment. The public comment period, at this point, this is where I invite members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items listed on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once on both on and off agenda items. This is your time to speak, public, uninterrupted. Please address your comments to me, the presiding officer, and public comments are limited to 30 minutes total. If you would like to request to speak, select the raise hand icon in Zoom before the close of the public comment period. You will then be called on when your turn is up to speak. Do we have any public comments at this time?
Yes, we have one in the Zoom, or actually we have two right now in the Zoom and no emails right now. So right now we're going to submit requests for you to speak. We're going to start with Elaine's iPhone. You're going to be first. Hi,
Welcome,
Elaine, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to request that you consider the impact to the Coral Homes development, as well as the impact to the traffic on Route 66, which is affecting all of us. But I think the size, the scope, the impact to our small neighborhood is a huge concern to everyone here. This is a little neighborhood. We all work very hard to have these modest homes, and we would like to keep this area as single family homes. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment and participation. Next up.
Now we're going to call on Dave Strauss. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Can you hear us?
Yeah, hi, it's Strauss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Sure, no problem. I agree with Eileen's point, and I want to add to that point about this development project. This corridor here on Route 66 is extremely dangerous. People drive very fast through this corridor, and there's been a lot of accidents over the years here. I think the impact with all these homes up here will increase the danger to the public by causing more accidents and possibly deaths. So in addition to the traffic congestion, I think it's just going to be way too much of a public safety hazard to have that big of a development in this part of Route 66.
Okay, Dave, thank you very much for your comments. Is that it?
No, we have 2 more. So let me reset this real quick.
Okay,
So we're going to call on Virginia Bonias. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Bonilla, we're going to ask you to unmute. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. You have 3
I'm gonna
minutes.
start the video. So basically, I just want to mirror what everybody else is saying. You know, they've addressed their concerns, but this directly impacts me. It's right behind me. So that to me is a big concern. Also with those 2-story homes going up, it's invasion of privacy. And again, the traffic is already a big problem. Even coming out from the small street onto Route 66, there has to be some sort of traffic light there or something, especially when you're trying to make a left turn. It's very difficult getting out, and that will just increase. And also I'm worried about just, you know, the noise of the construction, the more dust. It's already a mess with what's going on. So I basically want to express those concerns that I have, because it is directly behind me. We are directly impacted by it. And it's not something that I'm obviously thrilled about. Anything else?
okay, all right. Virginia, thank you very much for your comments. Madam Clerk.
Okay, so we are going to call on Carlo and Janet next. We're going to ask for you to unmute. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Perfect. Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, we live right next door to this development, and we live pretty close to. There's like a second entrance on Enola. So my question was, is that entrance going to stay open, or is the only entrance and exit going to be on Route 66? And could we request a traffic study to be done that if there's going to be any type of traffic study to be done, because it's going to affect the Coral Homes drastically. So that's our main concern. And also the 2-story buildings going up. It's like, again, I mentioned, someone else mentioned, it's like an invasion of privacy. We live right next to it, so that's a main concern for us also.
Carlo, I thank you for your comments, and I believe that's the purpose of this study session tonight, is to uncover options for this development from full approval to a denial, I guess I would say. So, you know, I guess everything's on the table during this study session, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight, to see, you know, how it will play out in the future. And I hope I'm not talking out of turn there, Jeff. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, let me reset this real quick. So we're going to call on next Brad Case. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of concerns here. One, I do live in the Coral Homes community. I live on Lope Lane. We already get enough people that speed down my part of Lope Lane. That's one of my main concerns, is increasing the traffic in such a small community. Secondly, you're adding 43, looking at adding 43 units. Let's average, say, 3 people per unit. You're talking another 120 people in this small community added to it. I think it would drastically change the traffic patterns just within the Coral Homes alone. Second concern I have is obviously the access off Inola. Is that going to be open or closed? And I know that's part of the discussion this evening. Another issue I have is, correct me if I'm wrong, is this not, and you can make comments after this, this is an R1 parcel. Is this committee going to change this to a multifamily parcel, which I don't agree with? We've already got enough people in this community. I know we've had problems with homeowners that live by the 31 Flavors and over off of Glendora Avenue with those increased traffic patterns and the people that are living there. And then another question I had for the committee is any of this going to be Section 8 housing, which, take it or leave it how you want to do it. But like somebody said before, this is a very hardworking community, and I don't really feel that we need somebody in here who's just not willing to I don't know, add to the community financially is the easiest way I can say it. But I genuinely have concerns. Everybody that I've talked to in this community about this has had concerns about those same exact issues, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, Brad, thank you for your comments and participation. Madam Clerk?
Okay, next we are going to call on Alethea Schallbatter. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And you did mispronounce you and 10,000 other people. So don't worry about that.
Sorry about that.
It's pronounced Alethea.
Perfect. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. No, I just want to echo some of the very same concerns. Like, this development is right behind me. And I do have concerns primarily, about traffic. Again, what has been said about Route 66, you're talking 43 units. That's, and double that, 80, 100 cars, additional traffic on Route 66. Also very concerned about that traffic running down Inola and running in the little community up. I live off Bermuda and then up Deerview, up Lope. I mean, that would just be horrendous. So I would strongly suggest that Inola not be a regular access. I think that was mentioned that it wasn't going to be, but it should never be, except for emergency vehicles that needed to get in there. Just because of the huge traffic that it would cause in our little community. The streets are narrow. There's not a lot of space. Also, as people have mentioned, the 2-story issue with privacy concerns, along with those other things that were also mentioned with just the compact of the community. And is it possible, even if they're going to go, if you're voting to, ideally it's don't build it at all. But if you're gonna pass it and let them build, how about building less units instead of 43? Why don't they cut that in half or a third if they're going to use that land, so that there's less population, there's less traffic, there's less everything. If they're gonna build on it, if you're gonna go through and allow them to build. And that's about all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alethea, thank you. I believe, again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but I believe just left to its own devices, that property there is entitled to 20 some odd units as it stands, without any help from the city. So with that, Madam Clerk, any more speakers?
Yes, we do have some. We're going to call on Lisa McLaughlin. We're going to ask to unmute yourself. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, this is Marty and Lisa McLaughlin.
Thank you.
And we've lived in the neighborhood now going on 40 years. And we've seen a lot of changes the city has made in the last 40 years, including allowing structures to be built higher than the limit that was originally set. of the 25 feet. I've seen them go bigger. I am all for them not changing the zone. There is no reason why they should be changing the zone. If it's 20-something houses in a zone for that now, well then great, do the 20-something houses, even though I really don't want that, but don't change the zone, okay? You wouldn't want the zone changed in your neighborhood, okay? I know you wouldn't. 40 years ago, if they told me the zone was going to change, why, I probably wouldn't have come to this town. I like Glendora because it's a sleepy little town. I could have went to Pasadena, but I didn't want to be in Pasadena. Why are we trying to make Glendora like Pasadena? Let's keep Glendora, Glendora. We don't need to rezone it. Is there a law that says we have to rezone it? Are you forced to rezone it? Okay, are they coming up to you and say, if you don't rezone this, something bad is going to happen? Why don't we keep it the way it is? There's no reason to rezone it. I'm done.
Okay, Marty, thank you much. Thank you very much for your comments. The state of California has a lot to say about how the city can and can't and what it can aspire to in terms of zoning anymore. That's just the world we live in anymore. But I appreciate your comments. And Madam Clerk, do we have any more?
Yes, we do. We're going to call on next Kimberly Jordanson. If you can, we're going to request for you to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak. I also emailed, but I figured it would be easier to speak. I just wanted to echo the concerns that everybody else kind of already expressed with regards to safety, excessive traffic that is already in that area, especially during peak morning and afternoon and evening, school times, pickups, drop-offs, and then of course the commuting times. The traffic on Route 66 is already horrendous at those peak times. Also with regards to, again, echoing what others have already said, if this has to happen, then why do we need to put so many units there? The lesser the better. If it's zoned for 20, let's do 20. Why do we need to squeeze as many properties in that area unnecessarily and causing even more traffic and safety issues? It's very hard already to get through that area at peak times. They were already shutting down, I realize they're shutting down right now because of the ongoing construction with regards to the Gold Line or whatever it's called now. But once that's done, then if you put all those units there and like others have said, 2-3 cars each house, that's hundreds of cars in addition to what's already trying to flow through that very small street. Route 66 is not very big right there. So that's all I have to say.
All right, Kim, thank you much. Thank you very much for your participation and comments. Madam Clerk?
Yes, we're going to call on Floriaba's iPad. We're going to send you a request to unmute yourself. Can you hear us? If you can unmute Floriaba's iPad. Can you hear us?
Yes. Hi.
Perfect. You have 3 minutes.
I come every afternoon from work, from Route 66 into Love, and I have to be very careful there because the cars behind me are going very, very fast. I am afraid that one of these days they are going to hit me. This is a very small street. The Love is very narrow, and sometimes even when you enter, sometimes you can find another car that is already parked there. If they are going to build something in there, let's build big houses. I agree with somebody else. Do not rezone the place and just build homes, the ones that they are supposed to be. This is a very small community. And like other people say, we have worked a lot to make it beautiful. We already have this ugly wall for some of us from the market. Let's do something with that wall instead of putting more cars into the neighborhood and make it an uglier place. Thank you.
All right, Lori, thank you very much for your participation and your time tonight. Madam Clerk.
We're gonna call on Jay Hannon. We're gonna send a request to unmute yourself. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I wasn't going to make any comment, but what's really confusing to me is why anybody would want to live so close to the railroad tracks. And if nobody really wants to live that close to the railroad tracks, who's going to end up living there? Well, it's probably somebody who doesn't have to pay very much for something that isn't all that valuable. And I just rather have people that want to be here, be part of the community, like one of the others said, and want to be here for a while and put down roots and contribute. So I just think we need to be real careful about who we're encouraging by the way we put in a new property, even where it's put and what kind of property is there. So I just would rather see something more valuable and more appropriate, particularly with respect to the railroad track there. I live on the other side of the railroad tracks, and I'm worried about it being too loud for me once it's going ever so often all night long. But hopefully it's not too bad. But anyway, they're even closer than I am. So I think it's a factor that needs to be incorporated into the decision as to, value and purpose of a property that's that close to the railroad tracks. Thank you.
Okay, Jay, thank you very much for your participation and your comments. Madam Clerk.
Okay, we're gonna call on Roxanne. We're gonna send a request for you to unmute yourself. Can you hear us? Oh, can you unmute? Roxanne?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Obviously, I'm not Roxanne, I'm her husband.
Okay.
But yeah, I share a lot of the same concerns that everyone else here does. I live right here, on Bermuda. These streets are small. And I think having an extra 100 cars going through this area would ruin the area. We bought here a few years ago. We have, a little baby. We want them to go out and play with all the kids. If you drive down this community, you'll see kids running down the streets 24/7. And having an additional 100 cars is gonna ruin that. There's no way. That's not gonna happen. Then it's gonna be a massive safety issue. Not to mention that I do share the concerns of other people that are asking questions too. If it does go ahead, yes, is there going to be Section 8 housing? Is it going to be subsidized housing? I bought in this community thinking that it would be a great community to stay here for the long term. But I'm going to be 100% honest with you. If it's going to be Section 8 housing or subsidized housing, I don't want to live here. I'm going to sell my house and move elsewhere. I don't think people on this committee would very much like to live next to a lot of Section 8 housing or low-income housing as well. I didn't purchase this home to be next to all that stuff. If that was my intention, then I wouldn't have purchased a home here in this community. And then my other concern as well that other people are saying is, is NOLA going to be accessible? That's kind of the main thing, because I understand Newsom passed the law and, they can go ahead and build wherever they want now, but just because they can doesn't mean that they should. If that property is allotted for 20 single family homes, great. 20 single family homes can enter in and out of Route 66 and they can start their own community. But if you're asking us to share roads and live with an extra 150 people, that's not realistic. And that's it. I yield my time.
Okay, Roxanne's husband, thank you very much for your participation tonight.
We're gonna call on Elise Mallory. We're gonna send a request for you to unmute. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can
Perfect.
you
You
hear
have 3
me?
minutes.
Okay. Like everyone else, I echo the high concern around congestion. When I look at the information that you sent, that is currently zoned as R1, single family. And it's probably zoned R1 single family for many reasons, because that's the only thing that makes sense where that property is located. I look at today, I live off of Hunter's Trail, and I look at if I go down Hunter's Trail at the wrong time, trying to get on Route 66, it can take quite some time today. So the whole thought of you opening up and adding another 100 cars right there where that light would be, and increasing that congestion and making the route to Lone Hill be another 10, 15 minutes is actually pretty frightening. And I don't understand why we would do that to ourselves. So when I look at the idea of maybe wanting to grow Glendora, I understand the housing issues around Southern California. There have got to be areas that make sense to put multiple family dwellings that do not create congestion problems like the nightmare that would create. So I am very concerned. I would want the zoning to stay as is, R1. I do not want to see a multi-dwelling unit of any sort go into that area. I'm not clear how you would handle the light situation there to make it not be any worse than it already is. And I think that we just need to sometimes say no when people come to us wanting to do things in our city that may not be the best thing for our city. Thank you for your time.
Elise, thank you very much for your comments tonight. Madam Clerk?
We're gonna call on next, because we received a request a little while ago for Daniil George. If we're gonna request for you to unmute for Daniil George, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, I'm Danelle.
You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Just very quickly, I agree with everybody that's made their concerns. I also wanted to point out that with 43 homes being proposed to go into that small area, you're going to be creating a limited amount of parking for those residents in such a small area. So most likely the overflow of vehicles that are unable to park in that area will be parking in the Coral Home community. We are limited as it is with our parking here. And just with that extra amount of cars, it'll be kind of a problem. We also don't have street lights in our Coral Home community. It is very dark here. We have people that walk, we have children out here, and with the excessive amount of vehicles coming through, that's going to become a huge problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Madam Clerk?
We're gonna call on next, Jamie Brady Smith. If you can unmute yourself, we're gonna send your request real quick. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect, you have 3 minutes.
I just want to mirror what everybody else said. I want to make it known that we do not agree with this development. We oppose it, and every point said tonight is valid. We live in this neighborhood. One other thing, on top of all the extra cars for the residents, there will be extra cars for the residents' guests. And so that adds to it. And we do not want this development to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, thank you very much for your participation tonight.
Perfect, so we're gonna call on Carlos Lopez. We're gonna send you a request to speak. Can you hear us?
Hi, good evening.
Perfect, you have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I agree with all my fellow Coral residents here. It took my wife and I about 8 months to find this home. We love it here in Glendora. We love our Remuda Street. We love our neighbors. And we're very frustrated to see these 43 units going in practically next door to us. I hope the vote does go against putting in these new homes. Everything that was said here, I agree with the traffic, especially on Enola. There's kids every day. I encourage these planning commission to drive down here unless you live around here, and all the kids and the moms pushing strollers, playing in the street. And I can imagine these cars going by. I'm former law enforcement, 20 years with Pasadena Police Department. And this is a great community to live. And I just agree with this development. And I hope you vote against it. Thank you very much for your time.
Carlos, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, a quick question. I know we've said 30 minutes for public comment. How many more speakers do we have?
Right now, I'm just seeing one more here.
Okay,
So this
I just
should
wanna
be
make
the
sure.
last one, unless somebody else raises their hand. Okay, so
Got
we're
it.
gonna call on Jadid Al Mazoud. I'm sorry if I misspelled it. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Naji. My wife is Jida Al Majzoub. Yeah, you know, I live in the community. I'm going to share the same opposition of everyone, single neighbor was opposing this project, and for the same reason they mentioned. And mainly I'm worried about the traffic because the way it is, Route 66, 2 lanes is very minimal to the amount of traffic I notice every day. And adding a few more cars, that will be probably almost like disaster. Because if the city approve project like this, I think they should, the same way they're making Gold Line or whatever they're making for the train, and to make the housing more affordable for someone to live here instead of Pasadena or closer to LA, I think they should probably do wider lanes or try to improve the roads anyway, which is probably impossible because you have businesses around on the right side and left side of that Route 66, and you have houses. And the way they expanded the buildings in the last few years, the way I noticed, probably I didn't expect that will happen in Glendora, because it's not designed the way like Chicago is, with wider roads, or the big cities, or like the train under the ground and on the metro underground, right? And so I believe approving project like this, it will be probably something you cannot undo. When you start approving things like that, probably the city is not ready to make changes I was talking about. That's being said, you know, if they have to approve, probably it should not be more than what it is allowed anyway, the way it is. If it's 20 units, it will be 20 units. But the thing is, even 20 units, it might be too much, counting the guest house, I mean, the guest cars and visitors to that new community. And as of now, it's not clear to me if it's going to be with subsidy or regular homes, or so I have no clue what type of residents they're going to share our community to. And thank you for listening.
Okay, Naji, thank you very much for your comments tonight.
Oh. Marcus, you're muted real quick. There we
Okay,
go.
any more speakers?
Yes, I have 2 more right now. I have Emily Morrison.
Okay.
Hi, this is James Morrison, her husband. I grew up, well, first of all, thanks for letting me speak on the last minute. I grew up in this area on Lope Lane for 40 years. And as a kid, I would drive down or play with my bike and toys on the streets and sidewalks. And I've seen so many accidents and almost fatal accidents on the corner that I live in. And people speed down the street, drift around my corner, landing up on my neighbor's front yard because someone's going too fast and thinks it's fun to do that. Somebody's mentioned on Inola that they might have close it off and have just a emergency access. Well, that is going to happen. If that happens, then all those people that live in that area are going to park their cars and walk through that fire access, I'm sorry, and just create a whole bunch of traffic and speeders. And I don't want it to happen. I think it's foolish and a big mistake for everybody who lives here. So that's all I have. Thank you.
James, thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
We have 1 more, David Friendel.
Hi, thank you, Commission, for allowing the comment. Listening to
the passionate comments being made by the public all seem quite valid. I have a couple of questions related. Looking at all the floor plan opportunities, I see that only one of the 4 floor plans offers a downstairs bedroom. That's a consideration that has come up in the past. And of that plan, only 1 or 2 units are considering that. So give that a look if you would, please. Also looking at the parking, I kind of look at communities like this and say, gee, on Thanksgiving Day, if 25% of the guests or of the residents have an event, where are they going to park their guests? And with only 15 additional parking spaces for 43 homes, that's a little difficult. So consider that, because I don't believe there's going to be on-street parking in front of the homes in addition to the driveway. So it might be a question to ask the developer. And lastly, looking at the elevations they've proposed, I'm hoping we can get away from boxes with windows in them. And while most of them look quite inviting, I would ask that they might consider extending a subtle eave to the home instead of just a box to a Spanish tile roof that goes straight up with no eave. I think it gives it a little richer look, and it might be a consideration they can offer. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Friendall. Madam Clerk.
We did receive an email, but they did speak during public comments, so I won't read the email. So we have no more public comments.
Okay, well, at this point in time, then I will close the public comment period and certainly invite everybody who did speak tonight, encourage and invite you to listen to the presentation by city staff. It may answer some of the questions that you have, maybe ease some concerns, maybe raise additional questions for meetings down the road, but I'm sure it will be informational at many different levels. All right, so with that, I would like to call on the commissioners to provide any statements or reports. Commissioner Koss?
No report. I just want to thank everybody who came to speak this evening. I'm very happy to see the public involvement.
Commissioner Ursetti?
Yeah, I'd just like to say the same thing. It's encouraging to hear a bunch of people in the community speak up, no matter what the issue or the agenda item is. So thank you all for taking that time. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Becerra?
Yes, I'd like to echo the same. I did take lots of notes on the concerns of the abutting community, and I'm sure that we will hear from the applicant and address all of those issues.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Norwood?
Yeah, I have nothing else to add at this time, and also echo, appreciate the concerns and voice of the community on this issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I would like to invite Community Development Director Jeff Coogle for any statements, or our City Attorney Lana Lehman, any statements or reports?
Just to comment, so this is sort of the first Planning Commission meeting we've had where we received a lot of comments under our new format. In the past, the public comment had been scheduled with the item, and in this case now it's not, unless it's a public hearing. However, I believe this doesn't conflict. When you do reach the item where the commenters have been speaking on, that the chair can reopen the public comment and with the commission's consent. I believe that is the rule, and Lana, the assistant city attorney, can verify that if I'm not correct in that.
No, that is correct, and it is a new format. And as the chair mentioned, of course, we would hope that the people who've made comments will stay on for the study session, but ultimately it is within the chair's discretion to reopen any further public comment. But the item that we have on tonight that receives most public comment, we're just starting this process. There is not a hard decision being made at this point in time.
Correct, correct. I have a question for you, Alana. At what point in time during the meeting, if it's at my discretion, in your opinion, does it become too late to open public comments?
Well,
let's say right now it's closed and another dozen people want to speak, or 5 more want to speak. At what point?
And then you are opening a can of worms, especially on a matter in which, as here, we're just doing a receive and file. We don't want to be in a position where there's some sort of precedent set where a bunch of hands get raised for every single item and they are addressed.
I actually wanted to ask Lana, if they've already spoken, are they allowed to speak again?
No.
Open a public comment?
No.
Okay. But they can speak again during public hearing, if they wanted to speak on that item,
Yes.
correct? Okay, just want to make sure. I just want to make sure and clear that out.
I hope I made that simple enough.
Okay.
A no and a yes.
Okay, yes. I got you.
All right. So is that all you have, Lana?
I have nothing else. No.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So we'll move on to special items. This is an update on Senate Bill SB 9, which we discussed, I believe, back in September, October timeframe. So at this point in time, I'll call on Senior Planner Hans Friedel to report out to us on the ever-evolving SB 9. Take it away, Hans.
Well, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Back in December, the Planning Commission asked staff to come back in February and provide an update on the status of SB 9 applications, how the policy was working, et cetera. At the time, the law had yet to take effect, as it just took effect January 1st of this year. So tonight I'll give a brief verbal update on SB 9. First, the policy framework we were working on back in November and December with the advice of Planning Commission is now live on the planning website. So that's good news. It continues to evolve considering current legal interpretations. However, the main ideas of residential lot splits and up to 4 total dwelling units on either an unsplit residential lot or 2 units per lot on lots split through SB 9 continues unchanged. However, interpretation on the precise mix of units and ADUs continues to evolve. I encourage everyone to take a look at the document. It's on the planning applications and document page, and we'll continue to revise and update it as needed as the legal interpretations evolve. Secondly, I did track our SB 9 related contacts I had with the public over the month of January. I have had 10 SB 9 specific conversations, either at the counter, over the phone, or via email. Some were combinations of all 3. Now, I do want to point out that a lot of people came in asking questions about ADUs, and SB 9 gets brought up. So, SB 9 conversations tend to be longer than for other questions at the counter, as there are, so many possible permutations and configurations. There's like 22 different combinations of SB 9 housing options, basically. So the policy document should now help with the length of these conversations. I've spent about 8 hours in January talking about SB 9 applications with folks. Some of these conversations were sort of more realistic than others in terms of people's questions. Some were just very high level and would be very difficult to do. Some aren't eligible, as they were in multifamily zones. Many of the discussions were very hypothetical. I mentioned a lot of the ADU conversations kind of overlapped with SB 9. Most of the new inquiries on lot splits have been for larger lots over 10,000 square feet. One was almost a 50,000 square foot lot. In some cases, people just want a secondary unit or an additional ADU. They aren't particularly interested in splitting their property. Some people, one in particular, just wants a bigger ADU. In these cases, they can just go straight to building permit, and we'll review for setbacks, area, architecture, consistency, et cetera. It'll be nice to try our policy out on an actual application, so we'll stay tuned to see if we get one. Bottom line is we've yet to take in or receive an SB 9 application, either for a lot split or additional units. However, I do feel a few applications are imminent for the extra SB9 units. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission has. And also I'd like to know if you'd like me to come back at the end of like the first quarter of this year with another update, or if you want it a monthly update, and I'll come back at the March meeting with another update such as this on how many contacts and applications we may have taken in. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. Okay, I'll start with Commissioner Koss. Questions?
No, I don't have questions. I appreciate the update. And yes, I would like to see, I think it'd be nice to see some types of quarterly updates on how popular these may be.
Commissioner Ursetti.
I agree. I think quarterly is plenty and gives you time to get some more data together. So I appreciate all your work.
Commissioner Becerra.
Thank you. I just have one question. This is a draft now. Is that right? This is a draft?
It was a draft. Now it's live. So I would actually call it our policy.
Great. Okay.
So if I said it was the draft, I misspoke. So it is our current policy. However, it can continue to evolve and stuff, and eventually will hopefully lead to an ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Norwood.
Yeah, I think quarterly updates are sufficient. Thank you.
Hans, I agree with my fellow commissioners, with the exception that if on any given time frame before we're up to the quarter, something out of the ordinary happens. You get 100 applications, you get 200 applications, unless there's some influx or something changes drastically where an earlier update would be more appropriate.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
All right, very good. All right, with that, Hans, we thank you for your time and effort. All right, at this point, move on to public hearings. This is an appeal to reconsider the denial of a recreational vehicle administrative review permit, PLN 21-0031 at 550 Sycamore Avenue. I now declare the hearing on this item to be open. I now invite Associate Planner Natalie Espinoza to present the staff report. Natalie, take it away.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Tonight before you is an appeal to reconsider the denial of a recreational vehicle administrative review permit located at 550 Sycamore Avenue. Next slide. The applicant owns a boat and stores it at the front of his property because they are not able to store it in compliance with the municipal code. The Community Preservation Division within the police department contacted the property owner regarding the code violation. The owner applied for an administrative permit with the planning division to store it within the front yard. The request was denied because findings cannot be made. The owner then appealed the decision to the Planning Commission, which is what is currently being reviewed. Based on the municipal code, the Planning Commission's decision is final. Next slide. To give you some legislative history on the project, in 2008, the city adopted new regulations regarding the parking and storage of RVs, which includes boats. The adopted regulations prohibited storing recreational vehicles in the front yard of single-family residential lots unless they follow the provisions within the code and obtain an administrative review permit. Based on information provided by Glendora Police Department, there were 123 RV code cases throughout the city within 2021 and this portion of 2022. And currently there are 8 active RV code cases throughout the entire city. Next slide. The diagram on the left shows that the house has what is considered an L residential building layout, where the garage is located at the front and toward the side of the primary house. The diagram also shows where an RV is allowed on the side of the property and may encroach into the front yard by 3 feet. The aerial on the right is the subject property. Since there is no room on the side of the house to store the boat, it is stored at the front of the house and is being screened with a wooden fence. Next slide. Here's a Google Street View of the property where you can see the location of the boat and the wood fence screening. Next slide. When staff reviews the administrative review permit request, the RV storage within the front yard would be allowed if the following 5 findings would be made. Staff determined that the first finding could not be made, which is the subject property is unique in size or configuration. The residence and property are of similar size to other houses and lots in the neighborhood. The orientation of homes in the neighborhood provides a variety of side yard setbacks, and some appear to not be able to accommodate some types of RVs. In the case of the subject property, the location of the RV doesn't comply with the code requirements, and the limitations are not limited to the unique size or configuration relative to other properties in the neighborhood. Next slide. Next slide. Staff did receive a comment from a neighboring, from one of the neighbors who supports staff's decision in denying the RV parking permit. Because he feels that there are rules and regulations regarding RVs being visible from the street, and the RV at the subject property is an eyesore. Next slide. Based on the information presented and provided, the commission may review the circumstances and find to uphold the decision or overturn the decision and approve the administrative permit, supported by the findings for recreational vehicle parking within the Glendora Municipal Code. The appellant and I are available if you have any questions.
Okay, Natalie, thank you very much. At this time, I would like to invite the applicant, Joseph Reed, to address the commission, if you choose to do so.
Yes, hi, my name is Joe Reed. Myself and my wife bought this piece of property, 550 Sycamore, in March in 2003. So I'm, applying to be grandfathered in is my first request because it is, the boat was moved there in 2003. Am I going to get a PowerPoint? Did you get my PowerPoint, Natalie? Are you going to put it up? There you go. So, yep, I'm applying for either to be grandfathered in or a variance. We moved here in 2003. Next slide, please. So this is a picture with it being dated of December 2003 of the house and the boat where it presently sits today. It's been sitting there for 19 years as is. So the present ordinance or municipal code was enacted in 2008. So this predates that. So I'm asking that I be grandfathered in to begin with. Next slide, please. So I built this fence about 2006, 2007. I took this picture from the street. I'm 6'2". I took it at my eye level, so it's like 6 foot. And the boat is completely screened by the fence. There, you can't see it. The fence is in complete compliance with all the municipal code. It meets setback requirements. There's a backup requirement, 25 feet. It's more than that. It's 46 feet from the curb. Yeah, next slide, please. You'll see, I can't see it, but maybe you can. It's screened on all 4 sides. So the fence completely screens the boat. The boat's invisible to, anybody driving by. So next slide, please. The fence is same picture you guys had, but the footprint of the fence is even with the footprint of the garage. And so, adds to the aesthetics of the house. Next slide, please. And so you can see there, the fence matches the decor and the aesthetics of the house. And so it in no way is, trying to, it's just a cheap setup. It's been there since 2006. Yeah, next slide, please. So I did receive a couple texts from neighbors. I only got positive responses. Here's a couple examples. I got several verbal responses too. Regarding the notice, I'm concerned that the notice, didn't have a picture of my setup, the house, the fence being completely, or the boat being completely screened by the fence. And somebody was going to say, well, he wants to put, a 50-foot diesel pusher in there or something like that. And it's not. I just want to have a boat that's been parked there in its present state for 19 years. So, yeah, a couple other things to consider. There's no RV park storage in the area. The lot of Vermont is being closed due to the Gold Line. There's a lot on Arrow Highway that's got a 1-year wait. There's a lot on Foothill that's by the Goodwill that's got a 1-year wait. There's no RV storage. Glendora is now allowing the ADUs due to housing shortages. Well, there are RV shortages as well. And so, reasonable RV storage should be rethought. And so my setup being that the boat is completely screened by the fence and invisible, I think it should be considered for the variance. So lastly, I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope you agree that, first of all, the boat was there before 2008, and I should be grandfathered in. If I'm not, I hope you'll, apply common sense that the boat is completely screened and it's invisible to a driver, a passerby, and I would be granted a variance. So that's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Reed, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, at this point in time, I would like to call on the public to speak on this item. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. Please address your comments to me, the presiding officer, and public comment is again limited to 30 minutes. If you would like to request to speak, select the raise hand icon in the Zoom before the close of public comment period, and you will then be called on when your turn is up to speak. Do we have any public comments?
I did receive 2 emails, but they're for the study session. So I don't have any other public comments for this public hearing for testimony.
And just to be clear, so the public testimony, at least I thought I heard it, the public hearing was opened prior to the applicant's presentation.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought I did that.
Yes, you did.
Yep.
You're making me sweat. All right. All right, so we don't have any public comments. So, all right, so at this point in time, I will close the public comment, close this agenda item, and close the public comment period. I'm in the wrong spot here. Received, where am I here? Okay. So my script duplicated itself. That's why I'm in. All right, so I've closed the public hearing. Okay, so at this point in time, commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant or staff?
Wait, and actually, if I may, let's not quite close the public hearing yet, because any questions of the applicant or discussion should be part of the public hearing.
Got it.
And then we close the public hearing.
All right, then I misspoke. Public comment, it is not closed. Public comment
hearing, you mean public hearing.
Public hearing.
Comments, hearings, come on. All right, so public hearing is still open, and I would invite the commissioners. We'll start with Commissioner Norwood.
If Natalie would put up the ordinance one more time, that I want to see what I think it was in the first slide.
Is it the findings that you're looking for, or?
Well, I know the legislative history. I guess it
Okay.
would be the findings.
Okay, Lorena, can you go forward? Keep going.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. And when the ordinance was passed in 2008, and I don't know if Jeff might need to chime in, was there anything in place for pre-existing? I mean, there's really no proof we could ever have of something that was sitting there prior to 2008, but was there anything that was in place for any pre-existing RV vehicles, boats, things like that?
No, there wasn't. And I do know that that issue of whether or not the ordinance that was adopted in 2008 should include some type of grandfathering in was discussed, but ultimately it was decided not to be a part of the ordinance that was adopted. And so that was the decision of the council back in 2008.
Okay. So this one's a real tough one for me because what the applicant has, I mean, he could have a junkyard that more of a public hazard than that boat is. But the fact of the matter is the ordinance was passed in 2008. I could agree or disagree with parts of the ordinance. That doesn't really absolve me from, using my personal judgment. I don't particularly find this to be offensive in any way, but the bottom line is the ordinance was put in place. It was voted on by the sitting council at that time, and I personally don't see where I'm in a position to just overturn what the ordinance is at this point.
Okay, Commissioner Ursetti.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, Mr. Reed, thank you so much for being here and speaking and your presentation on this. I agree with Mr. Norwood. I think first I do want to say thank you for the fence, keeping in with the neighborhood and nice. It looks fantastic, and I don't think anyone would disagree that it looks great, and you did a great job with it and the fence. However, reading through the ordinance and the way the regulation was developed with input from other RV owners, and once they developed that in 2008 to set a standard, and I think I'm inclined to uphold the standard that it is, just because there's others that have been told they've had to move their RV or their boat, and so that's kind of where I am. But again, thank you, for how well constructed you made it, and sorry that it's been an inconvenience to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ursetti. Commissioner Becerra.
Yes, I have to agree. I drove by the property and it is well maintained and it looks really nice. And I tried to make the findings myself to see if we could help him out here. But again, I have to agree. We have to stick with what we've already got in place. And since there's no permit for the vehicle that is there already, I would say that the existing non-conforming would not apply here. But the property is pretty. It looks really good, and I don't think that it's an eyesore at all.
Thank you, Becerra. Commissioner Koss.
Yes, I have to agree. I also drove past the property and I agree the fence is very attractive. But I know this was an ordinance that was passed in 2008 and that was 14 years ago. And so my thought is, had there been a wish to grandfather it in, the time to do that probably would have been, 2008, shortly after the law was passed. I don't see, I've been doing this for 14 years as a reason to kind of continue. even though it's, I believe it's a nice fence, I believe it's well maintained, but we have the ordinance for a reason, and other people have been held to the ordinance. So I agree that it should be upheld.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Cost. Mr. Reed, quick question. How long has the fence been up?
Yeah, I installed that about 2006, 2007.
Okay, so it's been behind the fence all that time.
Right.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have at this point in time. Any other final comments from the commissioners? All right, hearing none, then I will request a motion.
And now we close the public hearing.
Now I close the public hearing. And now I bring it back to the commissioners for a motion.
I'll make a motion to affirm the findings and decision to deny the application.
I will second.
Perfect. So we have a motion made by Commissioner Arcetti, seconded by Vice Chair Cost, correct?
Correct.
So the motion is to affirm the findings and decision to deny the application, and two, to adopt a planning commission resolution, planning number 2022-01, entitled "A Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Glendora, California, denying the appeal to reconsider the denial of the recreational vehicle administrative review permit on certain property located at 550 Sycamore Avenue, Glendora, California, plan number 21-0031. I will now conduct a roll call vote. Commissioner Norwood?
Yes.
Commissioner Arcetti?
Yes.
Commissioner Basara?
Yes.
Vice Chair Cost?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yeah.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Reed, I'm sorry it didn't work out in your favor, but please don't think too dimly of us. All righty, so that moves us on to item number 4, consideration of a resolution to approve a certificate of appropriateness to allow exterior alterations to a contributing resource within the historic preservation overlay zone, and a non-conforming lot development plan review to allow an addition on a lot with a deficient lot width and lot size. All right, so I now invite Associate Planner Natalie Espinoza to present the staff report. Natalie.
As part of the public hearing.
As part of the public hearing.
Good evening again. Tonight before you is a request to approve a certificate of appropriateness to allow exterior alterations to a contributing resource within the historic preservation overlay zone and a non-conforming lot plan DPR to allow the addition on a lot with a deficient lot width and size. Next slide. The applicant is requesting to demolish an existing shed at the rear of an existing non-conforming lot to construct a 458 square foot 2-car garage. The property is listed as historical resource within the HPOZ zone and therefore requires, HPOZ, and therefore requires a certificate of appropriateness. Additionally, because the lot is deficient in lot width and lot area, a non-conforming lot development plan review is required to substantiate the reduced rear and side setbacks. Next slide. The subject property was designated as a contributing resource within the HPOZ in 1999. And the subject property does not have a Mills Act agreement with the city. Next slide. The project site is located on the east side of Wabash between Carroll Avenue and Ada Avenue. The lot is approximately 6,400 square feet. Next slide. The project site is located within the R3 zone. Surrounding uses include existing single-family and multifamily residences with similar land use and zoning designations, with the exception of the restricted multiple family residential zone designated to the east. Next slide. Since it is a single family use within a multifamily residential zone, it is subject to the development standards of the R1 single family zone. The development standard table shows how the lot is considered non-conforming. The development complies with all development standards of the R1 zone except for the rear and south side setbacks. In this case, reduced setbacks are allowed with the approval of the non-conforming lot development plan review process. Although a reduced rear setback is requested, there will still be a 25-foot backout area that includes a 5-foot rear setback and the 20-foot alley located at the rear of the property. Next slide. This is the proposed site plan that shows the existing house, which is located towards the rear of the lot, and also shows the proposed garage located at the rear of the house. Next slide. Here's a picture of the front of the house. The front elevation will not be affected by the proposed construction. Next slide. And here are a couple pictures of the existing rear of the house, showing the shed and the rear house. Next slide. The proposed garage is consistent with the craftsman elements of the existing residence. It will consist of 2 garage doors, a gabled roof, gable ornamentation, wood siding, and composite shingles to match the existing house. The colors, materials, and finishes will match the existing house, and it will be verified during building plan check. The proposed siding will be similar to the existing, but they will not be exact to match the house so that it follows the guidelines of the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic structures. So this is the proposed rear elevation. And then next slide. The 2 proposed side elevations. Next slide. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the categorical exception pursuant to CEQA and to adopt the approval resolution. The designer and I are available if you have any questions.
All right, very good. Thank you, Natalie. At this point in time, I'd like to invite the applicant, Mr. Fu, I believe, Mr. Ho, and designer Dan Casiato to address the commission. You'll have 10 minutes.
Yes.
Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm the designer of it, so any questions you might have?
Okay, so you don't have a presentation or anything other than that, just answer questions. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a garage off the back, and we're just trying to be consistent with the existing architecture of the house. And I think Natalie pretty much covered. It's a pretty simple project, just a 2-car garage.
Yeah.
It lacks any really, it really, all it has is a carport and gravel parking at the moment. So right off, the site plan that was shown in the exhibit didn't show the alley at the rear. There's actually an alley also. So yeah, there's no covered parking for the house right now. So that's the main objective right now.
Got it. Okay, at this point in time, I'd like to invite members of the public to address the commission on this item. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once on this public hearing item. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. Address your comments to me, the presiding officer, and public comment is limited to 30 minutes in total. If you'd like to request to speak, please raise your raise hand icon in Zoom, and you will be called on. Madam Clerk, do we have any?
We have received no public comment emails and no one wishing to speak, so we have none.
Okay, so at that point, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission for deliberation.
Not quite yet.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Not quite yet. The commission may still have some questions for the applicant. and their deliberations should be part of the public hearing.
Got it. Got it. Okay, then we'll start with Commissioner Becerra.
I do not have any comments at all on this. I think it's a nice addition to the property.
Vice Chair Koss.
Yeah, I also, as I always do, I drove past the house. It looks like nice property. I think it'll be a good addition. I don't have any additional questions.
Okay, Commissioner Norwood.
Yeah, I concur with the other commissioners. I think this is a good project, and then we'll add to the home.
Very good. Commissioner Ursetti.
I agree. I think it looks great and really matches the details of the home in that historic district.
All righty, and I have nothing but good things to say about it, so consider that done. Okay, any final comments from the commissioners? All right, at that point, I will close the public hearing and request a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the project.
I will
second.
Who was second? I'm sorry.
Oh, Commissioner Norwood.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. So we have a motion that was made by Vice Chair Koss, seconded by Commissioner Norwood for one, adoption of a clerical exemption pursuant to 15301 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and two, adopt a planning commission resolution PC 2022-02 entitled a resolution of the planning commission of the city of Glendora, California, approving a certificate of appropriateness to allow exterior alterations and new garage to a contributing resource within the historic preservation overlay zone and non-conforming lot development plan review to allow a rear setback reduction on a property with a deficient lot width and lot area on certain property located at 236 South Wabash Avenue, Glendora, California, plan number 21-0020. I will conduct a roll call vote. Commissioner Norwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Arcetti,
Yes.
Commissioner Basara,
Yes.
Vice Chair Koss,
Yes.
Chair Davis,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
All right, very good. Good luck with your project. Okay, at this point in time, we move on to the consent calendar. Okay, at this point, I request a motion and a second to approve it. I'll make a motion.
Okay, go for it. Do it, Mark.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion made by Chair Davis, seconded by Commissioner Arcetti to approve consent calendar item number 5 as presented. I will now conduct an oral roll call vote. Commissioner Norwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Arcetti,
Yes.
Commissioner Basara,
Yes.
Vice Chair Koss,
Yes.
Chair Davis,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
Okay, at this point in time, it doesn't appear as though we have any commissioner agenda items unless something came up in the interim. Nope. Okay. Okay, unfinished business. There are no unfinished business items, which brings us to new items, new business. Study session on the general plan amendment, zoning regulations and conceptual plans related to development of 43 for sale 2-story condominium homes, a mixture of single-family condominiums and attached triplex units at 1706 East Route 66 and 1675 Enola Street. Project number PLN 21-0047. The applicant is Olson Urban Housing LLC. This time, I would like to request City Planner Mark Carnahan to present the report.
Good evening, Chair Davis and members of the commission. Mark Carnahan, City Planner. As stated, this item is a study session on the zoning regulations and conceptual plans for a new possible residential development. Again, no formal action is being sought tonight. City staff is only seeking policy input, comments, suggestions, or questions at this time. This is kind of a draft kind of idea that's being floated around for comments. Again, thank you for everybody who hung out this long to listen to what everybody's going to say. And with that, I'll start. Next slide. The project site, again, was at the addresses of 1706 Route 66 and 1675 Enola Street. It's this kind of triangular shaped piece that's highlighted there with red border. It's kind of bordered on the south is kind of the railroad tracks, and the west. The single family neighborhood is to the east. To the northwest, there's an existing multiple family apartment complex. I'm sorry, and then there Route 66 is to the north. Next slide. So the site consists of 3 land parcels that total about 3.7 acres. It has 3 structures currently on the site that are occupied as rental housing. There's also an assorted variety of accessory structures and various vehicles and storage containers and other items on the site. Based on some of our early record research, we believe that we're confirming that there might be at the 1706 Route 66 site, there's a multiple family unit of 2 units, we think. They were both built in the 1920s. Next slide. On the 1675 Enola site, it contains a single family house, which is on that bottom left photo. And that's a house that was constructed around the 1950s. All the existing structures and vehicles and other items at the site would all be removed as part of any development proposal that would occur on the site. Next slide. The site is difficult to see from the public streets, and so kind of let everybody know how the site conditions that impact the site. So there is actually some sloping terrain on the site. It isn't a completely flat site. It is kind of the eastern site is higher than the western portion of the site, and the lowest part kind of would be where the railroad bridge is at its northwest corner. That's probably the lowest part, and the highest is probably again at where the neighbors are at the east. And it kind of there'd have to be involved some grading and some retaining walls to make any kind of site development occur. There is limited access. There's an existing site access on Route 66 that's by those existing kind of sloped concrete embankments. There's an existing angled access way there on Route 66, as well as one on Enola. There's lots of existing trees of various varieties that would all probably need to be removed. They're exploring if they could maybe save a couple of the ones along the eastern side. There's some existing oaks that might be nice there. There is an existing easement that we noted in our staff report that's kind of an awkwardly located easement. That's the city sewer easement along the north portion of the property that kind of parallels Route 66. That would need to be factored in and accommodated. And there's also the adjacency of the railroad right-of-way, and which is also currently under construction for the Metro Gold Line. All factors for consideration that need to be factored in. So next slide. So with regards to land use, the general plan designation of the site has a land use designation of low medium residential density. This designation is intended for development of smallest detached single family residential lots. It permits residential densities of about 3.1 to 6 dwelling units per acre. Next slide. The zoning, which is at the site, is R1. It's a single family zoning, and the single family residential zoning per the code is to protect and promote the unique single family nature of the city, and limiting the uses in such zones to residential. And it requires developments with typically a minimum lot size around 7,500 square feet. Next slide. This is kind of just showing the proposed and existing. So the proposed changes for something like this that's being looked at would need the existing general plan and zoning to change from the general plan density of the low medium to a medium high. And then again, the medium high would allow a density of about 11.1 to 15 units per acre. And based on the project site size, that would allow anywhere from 41 to 55 units potential. Again, 43 is what's proposed. The zoning would change from an R1 single family to an R2 restricted multiple family. And that allows development of a project at higher than what currently is allowed. The concept proposal, again, is 43 units, 2-story residential condominiums, townhomes, both attached and detached variety. Right now, the plan showed 22 detached with 7 being attached triplexes. The proposed development would be accessible as currently shown from only the private driveway on East Route 66 that would have to be modified. And I'll show you the slides in a second. As shown now, Enola access would be limited and blocked and not used per these plans. Next slide. So this is the proposed site plan that kind of shows how the triangular site would be laid out. Again, that entrance on Route 66 is the primary entrance on the north there. And you kind of would enter, and then you kind of wiggle your way around to each of the units. And then there's those spur streets that kind of give you to the product. Most of the homes on the east there are what they're calling the single family products, and the ones kind of the tans and dark browns are the multiple family kind of triplex units. Again, the 43 are the one would be the 2-story residential townhomes, and 22 would be the single family condos, and 7 are the triplexes. The proposed development would be accessible again from Route 66, and again, Enola is being proposed to be blocked for vehicle access. But as you can, if you squint real carefully, you'd see that on the Enola there is a sidewalk being proposed for access into Enola, which I'll also talk about later. Next slide. So if the applicant proceeded with the current proposal for a future formal application review, it would involve public noticing for both the Planning Commission and City Council public hearings. A formal application submittal would likely include the following entitlements. It would be that general plan amendment and the zone change that I have already just referenced. It would also involve a tentative track map to basically merge the 3 existing parcels and facilitate some sort of a condominium development. It would involve a development plan review to approve the project development plans as it relates to the 2-story architectural design of the proposed development. And it would likely involve some sort of a variance for the retaining walls, probably along Route 66, for the replacement of the existing embankment walls with something new. Next slide. So I think that the items for consideration tonight that we need to kind of just let everybody kind of chew on is one is the density and the potential general plan and zone changes. One is kind of the discussion on the vehicle access and its circulation on site, pedestrian connectivity, the existing conditions, site design, and open space and community amenities are all kind of things that we'd hope to kind of have some discussion on tonight so we can get some clear direction. So next slide. So with regards to the vehicle access and circulation, again, currently the access is from Route 66 and Enola Street. Both of them are accessible to the site now. The site design proposes currently is proposing having a unit, a housing unit, block Enola for a vehicle access, but there would be a design where it would have some sort of pedestrian access to Enola. Staff kind of one thing that we're going to want to be kind of encouraging is that Enola Street really should be further explored for access, especially for some sort of emergency vehicle access. there are many times when Route 66 could have limitations where a second access point would be needed, even if it was just a limited or emergency basis. That would be something that should be further explored. The project, when it was to be moved forward, would need to have a traffic study that would analyze the existing traffic, as well as the circulation and line of sight issues on Route 66. Next slide. Speaking of that, the applicant has already started doing some initial traffic analysis with regards to line of sight, trying to figure out what would be needed to make the Route 66 access safer. The one thing to keep in mind, I heard some people getting it confused on where the access point is. This driveway to access the site does not line up with the traffic signal. That traffic signal is the entrance to the apartment complex, which is next door. There is a second driveway that accesses this site that is west of the apartment complex that accesses the site. It's currently a very kind of an angled entry that many people miss when you drive by. That would obviously have to be completely redesigned. It would have to, currently what the traffic engineers are kind of showing what would be needed would be some sort of a widening of the approach, looking like it'd be kind of angling it and making it more of a 90-degree entrance, making it two-way, softening the curves, but more importantly, allowing line of sight by removing those angled concrete berms and pulling the line of sight back with some retaining walls, and then allowing an opened area so drivers could look left and be able to see the oncoming traffic. That's the early read that the developers, traffic people are kind of saying would need to be further explored as part of any kind of future development, and kind of go from there on what the details of that would be. But it wouldn't be utilizing the existing entrance as it is now. It would definitely be a complete redesign to make it safe for that aspect. Next slide. The one issue though that staff brought up is that Route 66 at this location does not have any public sidewalk access, which is important for any future developments going forward. This site and the apartment complex don't have public sidewalks. The sidewalk terminates at the crosswalks at the traffic signal east of this site. Putting in a pedestrian sidewalk to this site would be very difficult engineering wise to achieve based on the grades and the traffic speed and how that all works. So one challenge of that is, how do you get pedestrian connectivity in the site? And the one thing that's being discussed right now is connecting with the existing public sidewalks into Enola. Not allowing any vehicle access, this is what currently the developer is looking at, but allowing some sort of pedestrian connection into the sidewalk system into the Enola and Bermuda. That does pose one challenging engineering feat, is that currently the developer of the track in the 1950s built the two existing adjoining houses next door, kind of close and kind of at an angle where their garages face the Enola. And you can kind of see in that picture right there, one of the neighbor's vehicles, when they park on a driveway, are kind of pretty close to the street. And there obviously would be, if you drew an imaginary line there, the city's right away where a sidewalk would go, but in terms of what our ownership is, would be somewhere it blends in with their yard right now. So while we could put a sidewalk right there, it would definitely cause a problem for them to get access, well, not access, to park a vehicle where they wouldn't be blocking a sidewalk. So it would be something the engineering department and the applicant's engineer would have to figure out how to get a public sidewalk in here to make it work. One thing that's being discussed is possibly narrowing that street there to allow the neighbors to have, those two neighbors to have their driveway kind of as it stands, but maybe making the street there a little narrower since it would be terminated, and basically be like what an alley is to an alley standard. And therefore they could keep what they have, but they'd be able to sneak a sidewalk in. Nothing's been decided. That's still a point the engineers still have to start figuring that one out. The next slide. On the site design, some takeaways that staff has on the project are that, all the units are 2 stories. Some of the are triplexes along the Metro Gold Line side. Staff does encourage, more triplexes to be done in the future to maybe provide more open space opportunities. The parking appears to meet the requirements. Except there might be some adjustments that are needed with future site plans for some of the open spaces. The garages also, might need some tweaks in terms of some minor changes. Circulation on the site would need to be reviewed by the fire department, as well as for us to decide about the access of a NOLA and if it should be an EVA access or not. Staff has recommended that maybe in future proposals that there be some sort of internal circular drive, because right now it's sort of a kind of a dead end kind of situation, and it'd be nicer if vehicles could somehow do a circular flow in some sort or within the development itself. And then also to further review with the civil engineer and a licensed arborist to review all the existing trees on site to see what measures can be done to protect some of the existing oak trees on site, to see if they can be incorporated in the site at all, and where, because there are a couple, especially along the eastern side, that could be. Right now they're noting maybe 1, but there might be some potential for some others. Next slide. So on the open space amenities, it's kind of showing where potential program open space could be. The applicant basically stating, hey, there could be, pretty large open space area located in the middle of the site that could include like a trellis and barbecue seating and fire pit and dog areas and all that kind of things that kind of shown here with these pictures. Staff suggests further consideration and maybe in the future projects, including additional amenities that could be explored further. Maybe a nice mailbox area for the community with, shade area. Further explore that large grass area, to provide, areas for kids to play, especially if maybe including some sort of a children's play equipment area. Maybe a community garden or something, maybe at one of those unused open space areas on the northwest or southwest corners of the site. And maybe even some more of that solid area for like a patio trellis area, something where the community could meet for like future homeowner associations meetings, where it'd be kind of solid and protected. Or somebody could have like a birthday party or something like that. All things that are really small in detail now, but could be further explored when the project's more refined. Next slide. These are probably illegible for most people to see, but these are just the floor plans, and they basically are just kind of showing conceptually how things could work, and they're kind of showing both the 2, 3, and 4 bedroom kind of options being proposed. Next slide. And this is sort of a flavor of what kind of architectural kind of things could happen on the site. Olson's a pretty prominent Southern California developer. They do a lot of developments, and this is sort of, I think, from some of the sites they've done around in the area. They kind of show what they could do with something like at this site in terms of its stylings. Closing up, and next slide. There's a lot to consider. I guess just please remember that this is a study session and that the commission is to review and discuss the concept and provide commentary and guidance to the applicant and staff. The study session offers the commission and maybe possibly the public an opportunity to see and comment on the current draft version of the proposed project prior to finalizing project details and related plans, which will be analyzed for environmental analysis and code compliance later, that would then be formally submit and then formally sent to the Planning Commission and City Council for formal consideration at public hearings. Therefore, the recommendation tonight is to just receive and file the staff report, and again, provide staff with some direction and preliminary input regarding the concept. Finally, staff can answer any questions about the project site, as well as Olson, the project applicant, is in attendance, and they also would like to make a short presentation.
Okay, hey, thank you, Mark. Appreciate that, all your hard work. Okay, I'm not sure who I'm talking to here. Is that Steve?
Yes, it is. Good evening.
Okay, well, we recognize Steve and take it away.
Great. Well, thank you all. Good evening, Glendora Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be before you this evening to review this new residential opportunity. My name is Steve Armanino with the Olson Company, and I'm joined by John Reekston, also with the Olson Company. I'd like to thank staff for a lot of hard work and effort on such a complex site. Many departments were involved in the initial review, and we're grateful for the feedback, especially in the challenging environment we've had over the holidays and over Zoom. So let's start with a brief background on the Olson Company. We've been designing and building infill communities over the past 30 years. We're a very customer-driven company, and we participate in a national survey program that surveys all our customers. And we're very proud to report that we're ranked #1 in the nation for customer service and #1 in the nation for overall home buyer purchase and home ownership experience. And you may also recall our previous community in Glendora at Bonnie Cove and Gladstone, known as Rose Walk, where we gained local experience. At this time, I'd ask that staff please display the aerial.
Hello.
Hi,
Lorena, can you go back on my slideshow to one of the aerial slides, please?
Thank you.
Which one? This one?
Maybe go to the one that's bigger than that. Keep going back.
I think I'm looking for the aerial photo.
Oh, the aerial photo.
This one?
Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's talk briefly about the site constraints in the property, which will help explain several of our design choices. There are two main issues, drainage and grade, that have the most impact. First, the site is a triangle that can always make for a challenging site plan. However, the grade is the site's biggest constraint, and it causes 3 challenges. First, how to bring the existing main entrance on Route 66 up to current public safety standards. The existing main entrance currently is too steep to meet LA County fire standards, and the entrance has a switchback, which makes turning visibility difficult for oncoming traffic. The second issue is caused by the grade. The second issue caused by the grade is how to solve the site's drainage issue. Currently, stormwater sheet flows off the site right over the Route 66 retaining wall. The third issue caused by grade is maintaining a proper grade relationship with the new Gold Line rail improvements. These improvements are under construction today, and they did not contemplate that this site would be developed in the future. So we have to maintain the grade as best we can in that area. The solution involves lowering the grade on site at Enola while holding the grade along the light rail. And this allows us to correct the main entry on Route 66, widening the entry, making the connection 90 degrees to improve visibility. Lowering the grade allows us to reduce the steepness of the existing main entrance to meet LA County fire standards. Also, lowering the grade allows us to capture the stormwater on site and stop the sheet flowing onto Route 66. Finally, holding the grade along the Gold Line improvements allows that edge to function as it was designed. It has been recommended that we look at a possible emergency vehicular access on Enola. That may not be possible given that we are lowering the site in that area, and the connection may be too steep for an emergency vehicle. We can work with staff and study that further, but it doesn't look promising, and we also understand, which I'll discuss in a moment, that the community is not supportive of any vehicular connection onto Enola. It's important to note that LA County Fire has reviewed the site plan and will not require the EVA. One final point on site constraints. You may have noticed if you look at the aerial that the site has many trees. Most were recently removed by MTA to complete the light rail improvements. We conducted extensive community outreach process with the local neighborhood. And due to COVID, we chose to meet with residents door to door instead of holding a larger community meeting. So we walked the neighborhood to the east, holding individual in-person meetings, visiting the community several times, speaking with residents on Enola, Lope, Deerview, and Remuda. And the main request we heard was that all vehicular access to Enola be eliminated, which is generally consistent with Enola's use today. Only one house has access from Enola. As I mentioned earlier, the main entrance today is off Route 66. Additionally, neighbors were open to 2-story triplexes along the rail to buffer noise, given the Gold Line rail corridor expansion. At this time, I'd like staff to please pull up the site plan.
Which slide, Mark?
I'd go backwards. There you go.
Perfect. So in terms of the site plan, it's important to understand the constraints and community feedback I mentioned earlier, which are incorporated into the site's design. First, we're lowering the site to correct the existing main entrance off Route 66. We're proposing to widen the entry, remove the switchback, make the connection 90 degrees, and we're reducing the steepness of the existing entry. Again, we're doing this to improve visibility and bring the entrance up to public safety standards. Lowering the site also allowed us to solve the drainage issue. As mentioned earlier, this may make an EVA challenging in Enola. Another point that's been mentioned is that all homes will be two-story. And we placed new single-family homes near the existing neighborhood and increased the setback area. Two-story triplexes will be situated along the rail. And additional site features include a pedestrian walking loop and 4 open spaces, including a main centralized open space with amenities such as a shade trellis, open lawn, barbecue dining area, and a fire pit, and 3 secondary open spaces with amenities such as cornhole game, seating, and attractive landscaping. And we'll be planting new trees throughout the site. If you would please, could you turn to the architecture sheet?
I think it's the last one, Rana.
Thank you. Oops. That one?
No, keep going. I think it's the last one.
Oh, well, there we go. Oh, that was it. Yes. Thank you. We are proposing Spanish colonial styling and Santa Barbara architectural styles. We believe that these styles will blend nicely with the existing neighborhood and look pleasing on the hillside backdrop. These styles have design elements such as red tile roofs, balconies with iron details, arched entries, exposed rafter tails, tile details, shutters, sculpted sills, corbels, and other architectural elements. Again, all homes will be two-story, and we are parked per Glendora code, including traditional 2-car garages with direct access, single-car driveways on some homes, and head-in guest parking spaces. Homes will also include private yards and balconies for indoor-outdoor living. And to conclude, let's talk briefly about community benefits. This site will serve as an appropriate buffer between the rail corridor, the adjacent apartments, and the existing neighborhood. We are also solving some existing public safety and drainage issues. Once again, we thank the commission and staff, and this concludes our presentation, and we're available for questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, so now you want to hear from us. So what I propose we do, commissioners, is why don't we do a round of questions? Ask all of your questions of staff or of the applicant, and then we'll come back around again, and then you can make recommendations, or you can ask questions and make recommendations as you go. It's up to you. But I'll go around twice for sure, so that, should something, spur a thought as we go through things. Like I said, you can make a recommendation at any point in time, but if you want to save it till the second round of things when I come around, that's fine too. That way we don't miss too much. So at this point, I'll start with Commissioner Becerra. Have at it.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Steve, for that presentation. As you know, the community has a lot of questions regarding the zone change and the general plan amendment and the increased density on this property. Have you studied any kind of density increase without doing a zone change, without increasing the zone from a R1 to an R2? Have you done anything like that?
Before I answer that, would it be okay to unmute John Reekston? He's also here to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners. Very nice to meet you. We really, in the initial discussions with staff, we knew that this site had been identified as part of the housing element update. It's not identified for a zone change by the city, but certainly it carried an opportunity to help meet some of the RENA obligations that are required of the city over the next 8 years. And so with that in mind, we tried to thoughtfully design a site plan that was respective of the neighborhood, where we listened to their concerns and wishes and how we designed the site, and use that primary access on Route 66, and with a total unit count that was consistent with not completely densifying the site, but providing a little bit more density than currently permitted, given its ideal location for that purpose. And the site really kind of stands by itself. It's up above Route 66. It's not immediately visible by most of those who drive by it. It's next to the light rail line, and it has a lot of different uses surrounding it. So from that perspective, we thought that this would be an ideal opportunity, and also as identified in the general plan, a site that could definitely warrant some additional density above R1. And so it was with that in mind, as we've done in other cities, that we really took a look at the site and designed the site.
Okay, all right, very good. So back to Commissioner Becerra.
Okay, so did you study a density increase, the state density increase at all, rather than changing the zone to an R2?
You mean, I don't think I quite understand your question.
So currently we're allowed to have how many units on that site, Mark? How many units can we have total? You're on mute.
The general plan would allow up to about 22.
Okay, and so if you exercise the density bonus to provide additional units, how many would you get?
Well, if you provided 10% moderate income units, which is 2.2, right? Then you could get a density bonus of 5%, which would be one house or 1.1 homes. Also, that would be at a tremendous cost to provide that affordable, or those affordable units, probably on the order of close to $500,000 per home at that density, just to provide one affordable unit. That really makes a lot more sense under Senate Bill 1818 when you have a little bit higher density than R1 designation.
Just to clarify, Commissioner, are you referring to the SB 9 and ADU laws as opposed to density bonus laws?
No, I'm actually just referring to the density bonus that you can get if you allow additional affordable housing.
Okay.
So you can go up to, I believe it's 30%. So you can add 30%.
That would require an extremely high percentage of affordable homes. Again, every affordable home would cost about $500,000. And I believe to reach a 30% density bonus, you probably need at least 50% of the homes to be affordable at moderate income, which would be at a cost of $5 or $6 million. So it really doesn't work for practical purposes at the R1 density.
Okay. I have a lot of other questions, but I'll come back around on the other after everybody else has more questions.
Okay, Commissioner Koss, Vice Chair Koss, excuse me.
Hi, yes, I actually, I had the same question about the high density. 44 units is quite a bit. And we recently rezoned several other areas of our city as higher density. So what was the decision to go up to 44 on this lot? Why was that number chosen?
Yeah, again, I think it was a combination of the housing element, identifying this site, again, not to rezone it, but identifying it as a possible site. It's an isolated site. It's wedged between Route 66 and the Gold Line, the primary access off of Route 66, and it sits up higher. So it's not, easily visible from the roadways. And so for those reasons, we felt it was an ideal location to take up the density just a bit. And again, with access only from Route 66, not through the neighborhood connection at Enola. We totally avoided that in designing this particular site plan.
Okay. What about, in looking at the number and in looking at the layout and just, it's cramped. It looks very cramped. It looks like maneuvering is going to be difficult. I'm also concerned about parking. I understand it meets the city's parking requirements, but there's parking requirements and then there's reality. And, one person has a couple people over and there's all your parking gone. So I have concerns about the amount of parking as well. Those are, and again, I'm concerned about such a high density project in an area that's not zoned for high density area. But again, I do have some other comments, but I'll go ahead and let the other commissioners ask their questions.
Okay, Commissioner Ursetti.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I guess I had a question. How many of these units that came up in comments, if rezoned to R2, would be affordable units of the 43?
That depends on the replacement housing that would be required. There are currently rental units on site. We have to do an assessment of the income levels of the renters of those units to see if there are any that are at low income. Depending on the outcome of that would determine how many of the units would need to be affordable.
Okay. And then, Mark, can you just give a brief description? I know we've talked about this before, but there seems to be confusion on from some people in the public as well as myself, I'll be honest, of what low income housing, what that threshold means based on Glendora income, and that it's based on Glendora's median income or and stuff like that.
Yeah, the low income units are below 80% of the Los Angeles County median income. So that would be, anything below 80% would fall in the median or the low income category. And one other thing I wanted to point out real quickly on the R2 question, and my apologies, is that there are several R2 zone properties, or a couple, that are immediately abut the site or across the street from the site. So I just wanted to point that out real quickly. Sorry.
If I could just clarify, just to what John was saying for everybody, is that currently the proposal that Olson's proposing is 100% market rate, with the exception of there might be 1, 2, 3 they haven't figured out affordable units that would be required because the state requires replacement houses for existing residentials that is affordable, and that's what they're trying to figure out, who the existing renters are. That's state law. And so depending on what their results of that analysis of the existing renters, that would dictate if the state law is requiring them to do a certain number, maybe 1, 2, or 3, or 4, to be replacement of the existing. That would be the only affordable, quote unquote, units that they would be proposing with their current proposal, and that'd be based on the state requirement.
And that would be for those 3 units that are on site right now
as replacement housing.
Copy. Okay. Thank you. And I would share the concern that a lot of the public had with access. I kind of drove the area today. went through, and it seems that at this point, it's, you have to enter for coming eastbound and you have to exit going eastbound. And with that many units in there, again, you're lucky you got two commissioners here that see things through the lens of a fire engine all the time. So that was, my first big concern was getting in, turning around, and then driving past Enola. There's really, that access with a sidewalk wouldn't work with a street and a sidewalk. It would be either or. So I do like the thought of a circular neighborhood where you can actually make your way through it and back out. But again, I think would love to see more about the entry to that neighborhood, possibly. You're really confined, I think, in that area too, with the walls on either side of Route 66. Would there be a proposed, I guess I'm just rambling and going to ask some questions, but turn lane if you were headed westbound to enter that neighborhood on Route 66?
We've designed the entry to accommodate and give plenty a long view corridor. So we're going to move the retaining wall to the south. So yes, we will be pushing that back to allow for a seamless right turn that will not affect traffic behind those cars. So we would completely reorient that entry, make it into a 90-degree turn with a very wide mouth. So that was a safe access for whether it's for public safety vehicles or for all the cars that will enter and exit. And pushing back that wall also allows those who are leaving the site to have plenty of sight distance as they look to the left so they can make that right-hand turn.
Okay. And have you looked into possibly making this sort of a circular neighborhood to allow for a little more flow? It looks like if where it kind of the bottom right corner of the triangle there, right, I'm sorry, the top right, if you were to take out, unit 33, that street could connect through and kind of cut the park off a little short to provide more of I'm just wondering if those things were thought out. Again, I drive a fire engine for a living, and getting in and out, especially when there's multiple emergency units on scene, is a big concern.
My son-in-law just got hired as a firefighter, thankfully.
Great.
Looking forward to that service. We did look at that and work very closely with staff. The central open space area was something that we collaborated on with staff to create. That made it more difficult to make that loop work. And it also makes it drainage a little tougher too, where you're not able to retain drainage as you are now between units. I'm gonna have to get my glasses on here too. 37 and 33, I believe it is. So that it helps with the overall drainage issue too, to have it designed the way it is. But that central park is impacted. So you'd have to jigger some things around to make it work, and it might affect the location of your larger park area. But I understand the desire, definitely.
All right, I will pass it along to somebody else for a question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Norwood.
So I do have a couple questions, and thanks everyone for the presentation. My first question would be to Mark. I just want you to confirm one more time for the low, medium density, if they were to combine those three lots. First question, they're all owned by the same individual, is that correct?
The site is all owned by the same individual, yes, all the buildings.
Okay. And from a low, medium density, there you go, leave that one there for me, thank you. I think Mark mentioned they could build up to 22, or were those 22 single family homes, condos? Is there a difference between a layout between a condo project and single family homes? Could you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, Mark, I don't know if you want to take that or.
Yeah, I'd probably say, there's a distinction in the code between general plan and zoning. So maybe I should clarify that. So under the general plan, it provides the densities allowed for the zoning. So it basically says under the current zoning, it's 3.1 to 6 units per acre. So if you do the math, that this site could be 11.5 to 22.2 dwelling units. So and a dwelling unit is just a house or an apartment, whatever. It's just a dwelling unit. That's what it is. The zoning, which is underneath the general plan in terms of regulations, it puts forth the kind of the detailed development standards, and it basically says if you're going to do single family lots, they should be 7,500 square feet, and I forgot the length of the width. It's like and 70 feet wide by 100 feet deep. So if you're gonna, that would basically be like a traditional subdivision kind of thing. So we would have to kind of figure out as this project moves forward, what's the desire for the density at the site and how we would kind of be doing its zoning. The general plan is the bigger thing here than the zoning, honestly, per how we do land use in California. So, if it's going to be keeping the density as it is based on the existing general plan, or if it's changing it, and then kind of figuring out what we're doing with the zoning. Are we keeping it R1? Are we changing it? Are we maybe making like we've done on past projects, saying we'll do some sort of a special zoning for the site, some sort of like site-specific zoning that's customized, some sort of what we call a planned development. It's kind of up on the table in terms of what options we have in terms of our land use kind of planning tools. It's really kind of the bigger question for me as a planner is what's the appropriate density for the site? That's really kind of where we need to go. And then based on that, we can figure out what zoning it needs to be.
But right now, the property is zoned for R1, low, medium density, and the minimum lot size per lot would be 7,500 square feet.
If you did under the R1 zoning, yes.
Under the R1, and the R1 does not allow for a multifamily, like a condominium project, even though each condominium is single family. That's not, is that correct?
Yeah, we'd probably have to work on that to figure out how that would work for the zoning, and if it needs to be the traditional zoning under R1, which would be probably limiting. It probably wouldn't get up to that 22 unit if you're doing a traditional subdivision. I wouldn't even guess how many units you should get, but if you had it it'd be probably somewhere 22 or less.
Okay.
But or you keep the general plan, like I said, or you do some sort of site-specific zoning where, in this case, they're not wanting a traditional subdivision. They're wanting some sort of like condo development where these are all private roads. These aren't public roads here. So in which case they would have one lot with condo kind of situation, in which case you wouldn't do it under a traditional zoning. So you would want to do something either multiple family or something custom in terms of like a planned development or something, I would imagine.
Okay, that clarifies it for me a little bit. This might be for the developer. There's 40 structures on the lot. Then I've heard the word triplex, duplex, single family. Are we talking about 43 single family units, or are we looking at considerably more units? You talked about the homes along the railroad being triplexes. Are each one of those? I mean, are you talking about 60, or I'm a little confused on that?
No, 44 total homes. As you can see here, you have 15 that are detached, and the remaining, I'm sorry, there's even more than that. Looks like there's 18 or 19 that are detached when you look up. And the rest are attached. They live very much like single family homes, albeit on smaller lots. But no, you're talking 43 total homes. And one thing that might be worth noting, under the current zoning, if you had 22 single family lots at a 7,500 square foot lot, with the accessory dwelling units that folks are allowed to put on those, or granny flats, you could end up, I mean, theoretically, you could end up with 44 units that way also. That's probably not going to happen in real life, but it's possible. This would be a much better planned way to, provide 43 units on site with a lot more, just a better planned community overall.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I see it now in the plans. At first, when I heard the triplex, I'm like, oh, I mean, I'm thinking like 3 in 1 unit. So,
No, they live like single family homes with an attached wall.
Okay. And then the one driveway that's coming up from the west side, that's the switchback driveway that would be removed.
That's the main entry that would be widened, pulled back from the street to provide the appropriate line of sight for safety purposes, and also graded, as we mentioned. We took the grade down so that the angle of the incline would be appropriate for public safety.
Okay. And my next question, and probably more for staff, is this project, if it comes back for approval from us, it's going to be a recommendation. The final approval is going to rest with City Council. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Planning Commission is a recommendation body.
All right. And then anything to do with low income or moderate income, that's also all done through policy at the City Council level. So recommendation, but ultimately that would fall with the policy decision at the City Council level, correct?
Again, the final decision is the City Council's, but the Planning Commission
Yeah.
is the recommendation body.
Okay. And Jeff or Mark, you can help me. Did we include this property in our arena submission to the state, but just not, but just correct?
Yeah, this site is a site in our sites inventory. It's not one of those that was proposed for a zone change. And so the units on this site are counted toward meeting our market rate housing numbers. You remember the way that the arena is divided up, there are low, very low, and then market rate units. And because of the R1 density, these the units that this site's intended to provide under the housing element are market rate units.
Okay. And there's nothing, if we choose to keep it at a low, medium density, we tell them to go back and come back with a plan with that at the state level, that they're going to come back at us and say that we haven't done enough to mitigate the housing impacts in Los Angeles County or the San Gabriel Valley area.
No, I don't believe so. The state is still, we're at our second review with the state on our draft housing element. So if they go along with the plan that we've presented to the state, then there's no, compelling reason from the state perspective to rezone this property.
Okay. And then I guess my final thing is just a comment, as Commissioner Setti mentioned, in our background in public safety. In the communities I've worked for, there's no way I would allow this project to go without the ability for emergency vehicles to enter through Inola Street. I'm a little surprised, actually, because what I'm seeing here is just if any of those structures were to have a significant structure fire, especially units 39 through 43 that kind of butt up against Rumunda, I just see a giant bottleneck. I just can't imagine no circulation through the property. I can't imagine no emergency access from Inola. If there were issues where residents couldn't get out for whatever reason out onto Route 66, there is no other emergency exit. If let's say someone had to go to a doctor or the hospital, if they couldn't access Route 66. So I just see a complete, from a public safety standpoint, the project itself, I'm not opposed to. I'm not sure I'm agreeable to going from a low medium density to a medium high density. I think I need some more information on that, but just from a public safety standpoint, this plot plan, I would never support it in any of the communities I've been involved with in terms of public safety, especially from the fire services standpoint. So I'll end my questions and comments for now at that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Norwood. On the topic of the emergency vehicle access, that doesn't need sidewalks, does it?
I don't believe so.
Any improvements to that entrance there does not need a sidewalk there, correct?
Not for public safety access.
Okay. Now, could that also serve as pedestrian access? Not vehicular pedestrian, but not vehicular, but pedestrian walking traffic access.
Yeah, that's possible.
And then it would need a sidewalk.
Correct.
Okay, well, I would be very much against that due to the fact I don't think any development should infringe, at least from a parking standpoint, on an existing neighboring neighborhood where the ability for holiday or party traffic to end up in an established neighborhood just because they can't fulfill overflow parking.
That was our concern also.
I'm very much in favor of the circular aspect concept in this development. It just strikes me as crying for some sort of circular motion. You guys are developers, so it may work better for you the way it's laid out, but it screams circular to me, almost regardless of whether there's a plan amendment or it gets rezoned at all. Along the lines of grading, would the grading change much if it were left alone to its own devices versus a zone change?
We'd have to study that. We know that there's an existing drainage problem out there that would need to be addressed. And we know that any access from Route 66 would require a design that is similar to what we're doing.
So 22 or 43, you're going to have to grade similarly.
Yeah, I think so. You're still going to have to get a public safety vehicle off of Route 66. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in terms of RENA, this only really applies to us in the market rate. Is that correct, Mark? If we go with, well, it would be market rate no matter what we do here, except for the 1, 2, or 3 units that would be earmarked low income?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any proposal for a sound wall along the Gold Line at all? What type of barrier is there between residential and Gold Line? Is it block wall? Is it?
No, I believe what's being proposed by the Gold Line is just like this mesh fence kind of thing. They're not. I don't think this is a site where they're doing any kind of wall. With this kind of proposal, it's typical for the developer as part of their CEQA analysis. They'd probably do a noise and vibration study analysis for the site, and then based on how that would come out, we'd figure out what noise issues are needed and if any of them need to be mitigated. So I wouldn't know at this point in time.
Okay, well, I can certainly see, and I would certainly recommend some sort of a wall, a mesh thing that looks really close to those residences. Looks like they're right on top of it.
And Commissioner Davis, I think you could, in staring at this a little bit further, if you had 22 single family units with the appropriate turnarounds and ability for maneuverability for fire trucks, yeah, you probably could leave the grade pretty much as is, as long as you accounted for the drainage. And then, maybe you just block off that Route 66. So yeah, you might be able to take all of the traffic in and out on Enola if you did a 22 unit development. Okay.
Well, I'm still largely in favor of at least an emergency vehicle entrance on Enola. It's just a long ways back in there from Route 66. It just seems like a long way, but and I think a circular aspect to it would certainly alleviate some of that whether it's 22 or 43. Councilman mentioned that there was an absence of downstairs bedrooms in the proposed units. Any particular reason for that, or any thought given to putting more downstairs bedrooms in? Is that a sales thing, or is that a structural thing? Is it a cost thing? Is it? It seems to be, and the reason I ask that is that seems to be the topic of conversation an awful lot.
Yeah.
Glendora seems to be a bit of an aging community, although I don't necessarily think that these units would be bought by, elderly people, but who knows? It seems to be a topic anymore with bedrooms downstairs.
Yeah, and probably, given that we didn't want to go 3 stories here or propose anything 3 stories, on that ground level, you've got your 2-car parking garage and your living space, right? And then upstairs are your bedrooms. And it just doesn't leave much room at all for a bedroom. And that's probably the biggest issue.
Yeah, it's a space thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Bedroom, holiday traffic. How many spaces are there for guest parking?
Steve, you have that answer?
Yes, I think I do. So there are 86 resident garage spaces. There are 19 head-in guest parking spaces, and there are 11 driveway spaces on the single-family homes for a total of 116 parking spaces.
Okay. Now, any other on-street parking or other than in a parking spot? I guess it would be on-street parking. That would be handled by the condo association, correct?
If people did violate, if they, yeah, because anything that's not.
They would set up their own guidelines. You may help them as a developer, but it would be up to them to enforce it or rearrange it. Okay. So 19.
And there's very strict parking enforcement by our homeowners associations. It's one of the reasons, as Steve mentioned, we receive such high customer service scores nationally, is that we help the HOAs very strongly enforce parking in the garages, two cars, two spaces, not using it for storage, the right and ability to inspect and actually levy fines if folks are not using their garages to park.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
In terms of the street, there would be street lighting there, or would it be similar to a new development, existing neighborhoods? There will be street lighting on there.
Yeah, Mark, there would be some required street lighting out there, correct?
Yeah, these are, I mean, I would say would be a typical kind of condominium development, that these are private streets, mind you.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would require some lighting to be, appropriate, and a project like this would probably have some sort of a lighting analysis done by a professional who would kind of figure out where the lights need to go and what's the appropriate light levels, and make sure there's not any overflow light issues into the neighborhood or anything like that.
Well, and that's where I was going with that question. I'm glad you brought it up, Mark, because that's a fairly dark area over there up against the hillsides, and it's there's not a lot of street lighting over off of Enola and that whole neighborhood over there. And I know from development in front of me, they put a fire station out in front of me. It might just well be Disneyland down there. It completely ruins a view shed, and I'd hate that for the neighbors around there for, like you said, overflow lighting, cutoff luminaires being, required, and is I don't want to say as low a level, or but an appropriate level. Would this be a gated community other than I'm not talking about the EVA, but it'd just be.
Yeah, it would not be gated.
Okay. All right. So, Mark, this question is for you. You had a slide up there that talked about variances. Would you anticipate the same level of variances or amount of variances if it stayed zoned the way it is versus being rezoned to allow for 43?
I wouldn't be able to speculate that on, because this site's entirely different plan than what, if it was stayed existing. So I wouldn't know what they would need. And John just said right now, the grading would probably be different if it was a different product type. So I wouldn't know what the variance that I'm anticipating would be for some sort of retaining walls, probably at the entrance at Route 66. So if that changes, that would probably change too. So it would be hard to guess. I wouldn't know.
Okay. All right, well, that's what I have for the time being. And just to be clear, Olson is not the property owner. You do not own the property at present.
We don't. We have control of the property, but we don't own it.
Okay, and you're securing entitlements on behalf of the owner so you can negotiate with them.
Well, we've already done that. So now we're processing the entitlements.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. All right, well, I'm going to circle back one more time through the commissioners, and hopefully we can wrap this up. So let's kind of go a little bit in reverse order here. Commissioner Norwood, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I've already expressed my, excuse me, I've already expressed my concerns on the public safety access. I am not opposed, and I'm probably gonna use the wrong term, to the project in general. I think there's too many units. I'm gonna compare it to the project that we approved and the council approved. That would be north on Bonnie Cove, that kind of butts up against the freeway that we looked at. And there was some back and forth on that, and those ended up with approximately 30 units. And I think people will buy these units. I think this is not something that, regardless of the train in their backyard or not, I'm sure though those properties will sell well that are backed up to the 210 freeway. So as a whole, I'm not opposed to putting something there because it's better than what's there now. As far as access off of Inola, right now, other than emergency vehicle access, I'm opposed to any access through there, whether unless it's an emergency where the Route 66 entrance is blocked off. But whether it's pedestrian or vehicle traffic, I'm opposed to it now. But depending on the number of units that came back, I still would like to see it in the low, medium density. I'm not opposed to a development overlay like we did over on the Bonnie Cove one north up against the freeway for more townhome type structures. Other than that, you know, our ordinance and code say it's a low density. Right now, I'm leaning to staying in that area. And but you know, if something came back and something that would be amenable to what we're trying to do, less units, circular driveways, in and out, I might be open for something down the road. But as of now, as this plan is presented now, I'd like to see it stay in the low, medium density, or a different project presented and with reduction of units.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Norwood. I think it was Commissioner Ursetti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davis. I agree. I would love to see an emergency access off Inola. If we can accommodate a pedestrian gate too, that I think that would be great. And then my only other recommendation would be to have some sort of circular access so that it flows off Route 66. You can drive through the neighborhood. The other reason for that limits backing, especially any neighborhood that flows and limits backing is safer for kids, especially with a park nearby, and would be more convenient.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Koss.
Yes, I also, I have concerns about, as I mentioned before, the high density. I'd like to see it stay in the low density to medium density range as well. I think between 22 and 30 units would be much better on this lot. You know, I have a background in looking at, you know, emergency services as well as a volunteer. And when I see something that only has one exit, that's concerning to me, because if that exit's blocked off, how do the people get out? So that's concerning. I'd also like to see something of a circular area as well. And, you know, when you're talking about parking, 19 parking spaces is pretty, I mean, that's a pretty decent number. But also, you know, there's not going to be any parking on these streets, because I'm sure that they're all going to be designated as fire zones. So as they generally are in HOAs when they're private roads. So, you know, I'm concerned about, you know, if more than one person has some kind of party, or 2 or 3 parties on the weekend, you're going to have overflow of parking out on the street. And so that's a concern as well. So those are my concerns. I'm not opposed. I think one of the other commissioners said, you know, having something here is much better than what's there now. But I know we've talked about the low income aspect of it and the 3 units, but I definitely think if you're looking at keeping it high density, or trying to keep it high density, more than 3 units, I understand there's a cost involved, but more than 3 units of affordable housing would be appreciated. But I'm fine with seeing something on the site. I'm not opposed to it in concept, but the density level, I believe, is just not supported by that lot.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Cost. Commissioner Becerra.
Thank you. I too think that having something there would be better than having what's there now. I do think that we should probably stay within the R1 density if we can, and visit other ways to get to the density that you need. I just have a problem with changing the zone from an R1 to an R2, but I know that there are other ways to get the density that you need. And maybe we should explore that. I just have an issue with changing that zone, creating that density in that area. I know that you're going to be doing an environmental study and a traffic study to go along with this. Maybe we should also see that before we start determining how we would vote on something like this, just to see if you can do all 43 units on this, and it would be fine environmentally. And again, I think that if we're going to agree to this density, there should be more affordable housing. I just can't see increasing the density this much and not providing some affordable housing there.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Becerra. I notice Commissioner Norwood has his hand up.
Yes, it was a quick question. It was on refuse. I'm assuming that it's an individual trash pickup, just like, you know, any other single family neighborhood I didn't see any areas for dumpsters or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. I guess I would echo a lot of what the other commissioners did too. I guess I'm fundamentally against changing the general plan. It just opens up so many different cans of worms. I'd like to see it a little less dense than it is as well. I'm not a fan of filling every nook and cranny just because you can, but I understand the economics of it, and I applaud you for trying. And if you get it, wonderful. The development overlay, Mark and Jeff, I think that sounds pretty appropriate for the size and shape of this development, and I think that gives a little more latitude than just saying it's got to be 22 or less or 43. I think that gives us some latitude without necessarily changing the general plan, and but it allows us some latitude between 22 and 43. And that's where I'm at as well. So other than that, Steve, John, do you have anything to follow up with?
No, we don't. We very much appreciate your comments, and part of the outreach here initially, not knowing where the access was heading to the neighborhood, was directly to the neighborhood to the east. So Enola, I mean, we did go south of Enola a little bit, but we knew that if Enola was going to be an access point, the traffic would be mostly heading to Route 66. And that's where we focused our outreach. But as we heard all the speakers, I think there were a lot of them that we didn't reach out to, maybe further south. And that may have been, after kind of talking through and spending some more time looking at this and how we ultimately were going to recommend the access from Route 66, that might have felt a little better about it. But that's just something that we take into our box of learned experiences. But we thank you for your thoughts and comments, and we'll take those to heart as we move forward.
Well, thank you for participating in it. This is kind of new to us too, but I think it appears to work well. Mark, Jeff, do you have anything before I bring it back and request a motion?
I do not.
All right, very good. All right, so since this is not I don't think this is a
motion to receive and file the report.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going. Yep. Yeah. So I would like to request a motion and a second.
I'll move.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Pick one.
All right, so we have a motion made by Vice Chair Cost, seconded by Commissioner Norwood to receive and file the report. I will not conduct an oral roll call. Commissioner Norwood?
Yes.
Commissioner Arcetti?
Yes.
Commissioner Broussara?
Yes.
Vice Chair Cost?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, very good. Olson Company, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
very good.
Take care.
All right, so that moves us on to item number 7, Annual General Plan Progress Report and Housing Element Implementation Annual Progress Report. So I invite Senior Planner Hans Friedel, welcome back, to present the report.
Well, thank you, Commissioners, Chair and Commissioners, and good evening once again. Tonight, I'll be presenting a high-level overview of the Annual General Plan and Housing Element Progress Reports, which after presenting to this Commission and City Council will be submitted to the state. Next slide, please. So just as an FYI, we're not asking for Planning Commission action other than receiving and filing the report tonight. Next slide, please. In terms of legislative history, California Government Codes Section 65-400 requires cities to submit a general plan and housing element annual progress report to the local legislative body, which is the City Council in our case. The progress report then gets submitted to the State Office of Planning and Research and Department of Housing and Community Development, and these are to be done annually. Cities are to report on how they are implementing the general plan's goals, policies, and how they are meeting the region's housing needs, importantly. Next slide, please. All right, general plans are often called the blueprint for a community and serve as the comprehensive long-range plan that provides the framework for the future growth, development, and redevelopment of the community. They broadcast the city's vision of how it will develop. Glendora's general plan is called Community Plan 2025. It is made of different chapters called elements. Each element addresses a different topic and offers goals and policies related to that topic. All elements may be updated whenever is necessary, except for the housing element, which is required to be updated coinciding with housing cycles in California. FYI, we just finished the 5th housing cycle and are starting the 6th cycle. And next slide, please. Okay, here's a list, table of the current 9 general plan elements in our plan. So it's got land use, circulation, which is transportation stuff, housing, which is getting updated, conservation, safety, noise, open space and recreation, air quality, and historic preservation. Next slide, please. Okay, so the purpose of the annual progress report, as I mentioned, is to provide an update on the city's progress towards implementing the policies and programs identified in the general plan itself, as well as the housing activity in the past year. HCD uses this information to track the city's progress in meeting its fair share of regional housing needs through the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which you may have heard called RENA. So next, I'll very briefly highlight some notable accomplishments for the year, which we've highlighted in this PowerPoint. Next slide, please. Okay, so the times continue to be strange due to the relentless COVID pandemic. However, there were 85 total housing units that received entitlements in 2021. This was got some sort of planning approval. There were 33 permitted and 24 were built. As you can see, most of these units over on the right side of the table there were ADUs, accessory dwelling units, so 18, and that's our totals for 2021. Next slide, please. Oh, and I do want to mention, if we can just go back to that previous slide one time here. I know something I want to mention is just this begs the question of how many units got built last year, and that was 27. So we're not that far off. That's actually pretty close this year as well. Next slide, please. Okay, notable accomplishment. Another one was, which we spoke about earlier, was the working with Planning Commission's feedback to develop an SB9 policy framework in about 3 months, really. It's now available on the website, as I mentioned, and we continue to revise it, and we'll work on this and report back to Planning Commission quarterly. Next slide, please. Okay, the annual progress report highlights really several development projects in 2021 in its land use section, one of which is the new 20,000 square foot medical office building at 210 South Grand Avenue. This building will support land use goal 28, establishing central nodes of commercial and employment activity, among other things. Next slide, please. Hey, so a big story in 2021 continued to be the Glendora Village Parklet program. In 2021, the city completed a parklet program manual, as well as installed 7 parklets within the village. These parklets link economic development, land use, and transportation planning circulation elements to help the village be more vibrant and successful. There's a picture of some volunteers getting trained on installing them. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of the circulation element, there was ongoing street maintenance and resurfacing programs that occurred in 2020. Here you can see some work being done on Washington Avenue in West Dawson after being resurfaced and restriped by Public Works. Next slide, please. And there was also progress in 2021 towards implementing the open space and recreation element and wisely conserving Glendora's natural resources. Volunteers led by Cornerstone Bible Church worked on removing invasive Crofton weed. There's some cool before and after pictures in the plan, APR. Volunteers also helped with invasive crawfish removal and riparian areas, and with trail building and maintenance. And here's some pictures of different volunteers out in the field doing different projects. Next slide, please. Okay, the attached annual progress report details many more activities towards achieving the goals and objectives of the general plan elements. This report will need to be submitted to City Council prior to filing with the state, and we'll do that presentation next Tuesday at the meeting. Next slide, please. So I guess in conclusion, it continued to be a little unusual due to COVID. However, as we can see, progress continues to be made in key areas, and things continue to happen in the community, and the general plan is realized one project, one program, or a few volunteers at a time. So thank you very much.
Hans, thank you very much. All right, so at this point, I'll bring it back to commission. We'll start with Commissioner Koss, Vice Chair Koss.
Just all I'll say is thank you for the presentation. It's good to see some of the things that have happened highlighted in this presentation. So thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Norwood.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. How often do we redo our general plan? Maybe you said it and I missed it, but when was our last update?
Well, so the last update, so as I mentioned, the chapters, the different elements of it can be updated really at as the city sees fit. The one that's not is the housing element. So the housing element has to be updated, and that was actually started last year, and it's gone back and forth between HCD and the city, and currently has been resubmitted to HCD. So it's sort of broken into different chapters, and then each chapter on the has when it was last adopted. So that's the most current thing, is that housing element update, which is kind of occurring as we speak.
Okay.
And then chapters as they need to be completely updated.
So the chapters are done as the city sees fit when they feel that it's time to update it.
That's correct. So some you'll see like the historical one are a lot older. The other ones will be more recent, like the housing element one, for example.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, Commissioner Becerra.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm happy to see that we're making some progress in these times. It's hard to do anything these days, and it's good to see that we're making some progress. Thank you.
Okay. So did I get everybody there?
Commissioner Arcetti, you forgot.
Thank you. That's okay.
Commissioner Arcetti, there we go. I got a check mark next to his name. I'm getting.
All I had was a big thank you, Hans. I appreciate that, and that's very encouraging.
All right, thank you. 2 quick questions. Who deems when a housing element is necessary? Hans?
So and Jeff may want to chime in on this, but the housing elements are attached to the cycles in California. So we were finishing the 5th cycle, I believe was 2013 to 2021. And there's a certain number, so it's HCD, Housing Community Development. And so the element has to show progress during that cycle towards your regional allocation of housing that each jurisdiction or local agency is supposed to provide. So that we're now starting the 6th cycle. And so you have to have a housing element as part of your general plan.
Okay. And then real quickly, feedback on the parklets. It appears to be pretty good.
So far, I've heard mostly good things. I'll defer to Jeff there if he's heard anything differently. I think we also have Stephen on this meeting as well, who I believe manages that program.
Yeah, I just add, yeah, I think the parklets have generally been well received, and Stephen will give his presentation. He's going to talk about the bus electrification project, but generally we're planning more things, more improvements in the village and around the area as part of the greater people movement project that you may have heard of with respect to bike and pedestrian improvements and urban trails and other things in the village. So it's been very successful.
Okay, good.
I'll add that I've seen, every time I walk down there, I've seen people enjoying lunch or whatever the time of day is out on them. So they seem to be well enjoyed.
I've found myself migrating down there more often than I think I had before they were there. It seems like anyway. Okay, with that, I will make a motion to receive and file the general plan annual progress report and the housing element implementation annual progress report. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who motioned first? I'm sorry.
Oh, and
Chairman Davis.
And the second was?
Rossetti.
Thank you. We have a motion by Chair Davis, seconded by Commissioner Rossetti. I will conduct an oral roll call vote. Commissioner Norwood?
Yes.
Commissioner Rossetti?
Yes.
Commissioner Becerra?
Yes.
Vice Chair Koss?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
You betcha.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, very good. Moves us to number 8, bus fleet electrification. So with that, I would like to invite Transportation Manager Steve Mateer to present the report.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Planning Commission. I know we're getting late in the evening, so I'll keep my remarks brief. This is an update to one of our major capital programs, which is to electrify our bus fleet. Next slide, please. So in terms of our background, some of you know we operate both a fixed route and a paratransit, which is for seniors and persons with disabilities. We're also working now under the Innovative Clean Transit Rule, which is from the California Air Resources Board. We're looking at the Charge Ready Transport program from SoCal Edison, and we have a couple of grants that we're working on for our fleet. And lastly, Glendora recently, in the past couple of years, has really emerged as a regional leader in transportation, and this is another step in that direction. Next slide. So in terms of the policy context, there are two general plan policies that really support our electrification. One is to plan for adequate bus service to meet our future needs, and as well as to promote and encourage the use of public transit. There's also the Innovative Clean Transit Rule, which was adopted by the California Air Resources Board and requires all transit operators to electrify their fleet, starting for large operators in a couple of years and ramping up. For small operators like us, we start in 2025 with a longer horizon to fully electrify. Lastly, there's a lot of new funding sources out there encouraging the movement away from CNG, fossil fuels, to zero emission technologies. Next slide. So as part of our Innovative Clean Transit Rule, we are preparing a zero emission rollout plan. This documents our fleet, the replacement schedules, and the cost to electrify. It also identifies the barriers and opportunities. We're looking to bring a draft of this to the Planning Commission. I know I said in February, I'll probably be more like in March now, and bring you a final report in May. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there's a Charge Ready Transport program, which is a program by Southern California Edison to install make ready work, which is pretty much anything from the power line up to the charger for free. As long as we agree to operate the system for 10 years, as long as we meet certain other grant requirements. One of the interesting things about this is we're having to move our transit yard from our current location near Finkliner Park to the Parks Yard just off the Compromise line in Route 66. This is the draft yard plan prepared by Edison. In green are where our 4 DC fast chargers will be placed, and the red are where our vans for dial ride service will be parked. Next slide. In terms of our chargers, we recently awarded a $107,000 grant from the Southern California Air Quality Management District under the Carl Moyer Grant Program. That will pay for the purchase and installation of 4 DC fast chargers, which is you see in that picture. Next slide. So in terms of the funding plan, it is a pretty substantial upfront cost. The cost to install chargers at the yard is about $202,000. The cost to buy electric buses for us is about just over $400,000 per vehicle. We currently have 1 under contract in production. When we come back to council with our grant award, we'll be buying a second bus, and that will also allow us to fully complete the Southern California Edison program. Next slide. I know that was a quick run through, so that I can take any questions that the commission has.
Thanks, Steve. All right, Commissioner Rossetti.
None from me. Thank you, Steve.
Commissioner Becerra.
No questions from me as well. Thank you.
Vice Chair Koss.
I have no questions. Thank you for the report.
Commissioner Norwood.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anything earth-shattering to ask or add to that as well. So with that, I'd request a motion.
I'll move.
File this report.
I will move.
We have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Koss, seconded by Commissioner Becerra. We'll conduct an roll call vote. Commissioner Norwood?
Yes.
Commissioner Arcetti?
Yes.
Commissioner Becerra?
Yes.
Vice Chair Koss?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, very good. All right, brings us to commission staff closing comments. I invite anybody from staff have anything to add for the good of the order?
None for me.
Hold on, I see a hand up. Steve, you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. And as you've asked a question about the parklets, I wanted to let the commission know we recently received a grant and have placed new furniture on Mita Avenue. So we invite you to come out, check it out, give us some feedback. This is part of our early action for the Mita Avenue improvements.
Oh, awesome. All right, thank you. All right, takes care of that. All right, so staff has nothing. Commissioner Norwood, anything to add for the good of the order?
None today. Thank you.
Commissioner Ursetti.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate with the community that we had quite a few community speakers today, and just how great that is. I think that everybody wanted to speak up, and everybody's passionate about where they live, and that's understandable. So, but I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone's input.
Yes, thank you. I second your sentiments. Commissioner Becerra.
I third his sentiments. I really enjoy seeing the community come out and participate. Thank you.
Vice Chair Koss.
Nothing to add, just I also want to thank people. I really like when people are involved and informed about their community. So thank you for that.
All right, very good. Yeah, again, I want to reiterate to everybody, staff, all the presenters, the citizenry, everybody who participated in tonight's meeting. Thank you very much for your civic outreach here, and it's much appreciated. So if there's nothing else from staff or commission, then I will adjourn this meeting at
9:55.